Dynasty Nerds on Better Sports Network.
Welcome back, everybody. It is the Dynasty Nerd Show. It is Wednesday night. I almost said Thursday, just out of habit. I almost said it was Thursday night. It is not Thursday night. It is Wednesday. We are just a little bit away from week 3. This time tomorrow, we will be watching that sweet, succulent football once again. But right now, we have got so many things to cover. I was talking about it with Heavy T right before this. This season already has been insane. It's been absolutely insane. Sedated Fork, what's up, my man? First one in every time. Consistency. Better boss, what's good? Yeah, it has been a lot. It has been a lot this season already. Lots of injuries. We're going to discuss quite a few injuries tonight. Talk about how those are going to affect your fantasy football season, short term, long term. Josh, what's up? Yeah, man, it's been a really brutal season. And Michael Anthony's here. Look, maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment, and that could be true. I could be a prisoner of the moment. But I'm trying to think back over the past decade or so of football. And I cannot remember, we're not talking preseason. We're talking about the news that we got leading into week 1 through now. It's been a lot. We've got plenty of stars for fantasy football out for the season. We've got big name players vastly underperforming. We've got a lot of small, little injuries to monitor. We've already had trades happen in the first 2 weeks. We've had guys come out of nowhere and become fantasy stars. Looking at you, Rams, doing half the work there. Marcus, what's up, man? Good to have you here. Yeah, so it has been a wild first 2 weeks. So we're going to break it all down. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to talk about injuries. We've got Dennis Bennett coming on at 10:15 as always. And then here momentarily, we are going to have Rich Dotson. That's right. Normally you hear us together on the Dynasty Nerds podcast. Now you're going to hear us here on BSN. We're going to be breaking down some things that happened in week 2, how we feel on a couple of different topics. So anytime that Rich gets to come on here, you know it's going to be a good time. You know he's going to say something, and I'm going to be embarrassed. And I'm going to try to keep a straight face, and I won't be able to. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's how radio, podcast, shows like this should be. So we've got Dan here. We've got Jason here. Man, the crew's all here tonight. Everybody's ready to talk some fantasy football. Everybody, Marcus is asking if there's any chance we do trades. Yes, if you're new here, I know some of you guys haven't been here very often. What we'll have is we're going to have Rich on for about 45 minutes or so. And then there's a gap for about a half hour in there. We'll do some commercials, but during that time as well, that's when I will answer a lot of your start sit questions, your trade questions, things like that. So right around 9:40, 9:45, we'll get all those trade questions in, and I'll get to as many of those as I can get to. So without further ado, Tyler, Rich is here, right? We're good to go on Rich? Yeah, look at this guy. What a stud.
Hey.
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Oh, dude, just hanging out, yelling at my kids, stuff like that. And a very eventful day being an adult and a dad. So, yeah, good to be here, though, talking some Dynasty. Yeah, turn that frown upside down, call this McDonald's.
Absolutely. Rich Dotson, the OG of Dynasty, the Godfather, at Rich Dotson on Twitter or on X or whatever you're wanting to call it right now.
At Dynasty Rich.
At Dynasty Rich. That's right. So we've got a lot of stuff to cover. Some of these things we talked about a little bit yesterday, but some people haven't heard the pod yet. And we'll also have a few different takeaways, but let's get to the hardest part first. We're going to get the hardest part out of the way. And let's touch on Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, best running back in the NFL. You can say whatever you want. Christian McCaffrey, all those guys, they're all fantastic. But I think Nick Chubb's the best running back in the NFL. What do we do now here? Because we have 4 that looked actually decent in his absence. Kareem Hunt signed today. touch on Nick Chubb and what he meant to you as a fan, but also as a fantasy asset. And then let's get into what we do in his absence.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Chubb, I'm with you about is my favorite running back in the NFL. Obviously, my Browns homer too, but I mean, he's virtually respected like everywhere, right? Like everybody respects Nick Chubb. And now that he's gone, it looks like Jerome Ford's gonna be the number one running back. I think the number one question I got today is like, who do I pick up, Jerome Ford or Kareem Hunt? And the answer is definitely going to be Jerome Ford. He'll be the number one at any time. Kareem Hunt could have been the number two, and he was a free agent instead. I heard from some sources out here that he was only offered a league minimum by those three other teams, which we thought with the Colts and the Saints. So, Nick Chubb's going to be the third down back, short, maybe short yardage guy here in Cleveland, and kind of what his role was before. The offense gets humming. I mean, at one point when it was him and Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt put up running back numbers strictly on PPR usage. He has lost a step, to say the least. So we don't know how that's going to really translate to fantasy excellence, but to me, he's more of a stash right now, which is everybody's been doing like in Dynasty, but for the redraft, like you're picking him up, you're putting him on your roster, and you're going to see how it plays out. But right now, he's nothing more than a backup, no different than any other third down back in the NFL right now. Him, Jerick McKinnon, be just as excited about both.
As far as Jerome Ford goes, what level of production are you expecting? Because he looked solid. He looked solid in his, brief time that we got to see him in the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are we thinking high-end running back 2, low-end running back 2, running back 3? Like, what kind of level are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, well, first, let's still stay healthy, because if you stay healthy, that alone this year is going to propel you to, overall finish. But on points per game basis, them bringing in Kareem Hunt, and if Kareem Hunt is going to be involved on the third downs and take some of that pass catching ability away from Jerome Ford, then it's going to hurt him, because he's going to be a first, second down back on an offensive line that so far has looked pretty shaky, with a quarterback that likes to improvise, move, get on the run, and a lot of their options in the passing game. So if he stays healthy and get the decent amount of touches, he could definitely finish as a running back 2. But he's got a lot of people to overcome to enter that running back 1 stage, or even that high end running back 2. If you're not going to go to PPR aspect of that, him and Kareem Hunt probably be pretty equal when it comes to a point per game basis. So that's how that's going to play out. It's a wait and see. Both look like handcuffs. I have no problem starting Jerome Ford though right out the gates, just because I know he is the number 1. And anytime I get the number 1 in my lineup, no different than, it is different. But when you have a guy like Kenneth Walker, right, who everybody knows is talented, he's in first and second down. That's it, and he can produce and give you those good solid running back 2 numbers, and put up, when he scores touchdowns, running back 1 numbers. Can Jerome Ford do that? Possibly. I mean, look what he did in 3 quarters versus Pittsburgh. And he hit a big run, had over 100 yards rushing, and that was just in 3 quarters. And so for me, he is capable of breaking out a big run. He was a nice player there. He was a big part of why Cincinnati on offensively was dynamic when the actual college football playoffs. So I'm excited about him, but like realistically, I'm hoping he can be a solid running back too. I mean, if he finishes running back 15, 16, like mid-range there, I'd be really happy with the guy who had on my bench. I had no problems thinking I was getting some use of, and give me that consistent running back 2 points. Definitely, if you play in a league with a flex, what a great flex option, right? A guy that you had maybe as a stash, maybe you just picked up of a waiver wire. Kyron Williams is in that same kind of boat. I'm sure a lot of people did not draft Puka Nacua there as well. So yeah, it's an exciting upside, and then mystery is unknown, right? We don't know what Jerome Ford's going to completely be in this offense. We know Nick Chubb has had a lot of success. We know Kareem Hunt has had success in this offense, definitely when he's been the main guy. So let's see if that can translate over to a guy who's super young, only in the second year in the NFL, who didn't get any snaps last year, and that's Jerome Ford.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to another injury. Peter's thing is to always comment on my hair. So I think that's why he's saying that you have a great haircut right now, because that's his thing.
I got a great haircut. I mean, keep stating the obvious there, Peter.
Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's been a frustrating player so far this year. Obviously, he's been a dynasty darling in super flex leagues the past couple of years, but let's just call a spade a spade. He's looked bad. He's looked really bad the first couple of weeks. But I know that there's been the injury and the weather and different things like that. But are we concerned that maybe this season, or at least the first half of the season, maybe we should lower the expectations, not just for Burrow, who could miss time with this calf injury, but also maybe T. Higgins and Jamar Chase? Like, is this offense not going to be what we typically expect the Cincinnati offense to be?
Yeah, I mean, outside of week 2, I mean, we're only 2 weeks into it, but obviously week 2, T. Higgins, that's all I got you. Jamar Chase has got a total of 17 fantasy points overall. Joe Mixon's doing pretty solid, but he should, because he's getting like 75-80% of the snaps. So with Joe Burrow, this is a team that also started off 0-2 last year. I'm not totally freaking out about all these quarterbacks quite yet. We have to remember, most of these guys don't even play in the preseason. Right. They're playing a couple quarters, a couple series, and that's it. The league has switched over and made sure not even worth risking their high-end players in preseason, because that juice isn't worth the squeeze unless you get a joint practice in like week 1, week 2. That's kind of the extended preseason for these players. So, with Joe Burrow, we know he has that calf injury. He didn't have a lot of practice, so even a shorter preseason for him. And it kind of popped back up again this week. Am I concerned? I mean, as long as he gets right, I mean, if you're not playing in a super flex league, it's easy to find somebody to fill in for Joe Burrow for the next couple of weeks. I mean, you probably got Sam Howell off your waiver wire if you want to. There's always availability there. So I'm not concerned long-term. I think that it's just a calf. Well, I just say it's a calf injury. It's like no big deal. But if I assume they're not shutting him down, which if it was serious, they would have just shut him down, right? They wouldn't just put him out there. I think their doctors would be well enough to know, hey, this is a long-term game we're playing here. This isn't like, oh, we hope we're kind of good. We have Super Bowl aspirations. So if that means that they should sit Joe Burrow one more week, then I think they're going to make the right decision, and we'll find out soon enough. But if he sits, yeah, I mean, it hurts Jamar Chase. It hurts T. Higgins. Jamar Chase is somebody that some people took number 1 overall in fantasy football. And, that's a pedigree that you have to live up to. And that's what I think everybody loves about fantasy football so much, man. It's not just all the highs that you get from all these like Puka Nakuas, we second Kyron Williams. It's the lows too. It's like you don't see coming. The injuries, the Nick Chubbs, the J.K. Dobbins, the Jamar Chases only put up 17 points. Joe Burrow, we don't know what's going on there. What's happening in L.A.? Who's the running back? Oh, Cam Akers goes to Minnesota. It's like this nonstop soap opera that we're watching that we're all addicted to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tuckleberry, we will get to that right around 9:40, 9:45. That's when we do all of the trade questions, the start sits, things like that. But you're absolutely right. And this year is maybe even more so than ever, but that's why I always hesitate to trade my first before the season starts, because you could have gone into the season with Joe Burrow and Alvin Kamara and J.K. Dobbins and Nick Chubb at running back. And then you have Jamar Chase. And like, you could have had all of these guys at all of these positions, and you could be 0-2 right now, looking down the barrel of 0-3, 0-4, depending on when Taylor comes back and Kamara comes back. Like, you never know how these things are going to play out. And yeah, you're always pushing for a ship whenever you get the opportunity, but it's tough sledding sometimes when you've traded future years out and you're like, oh crap, I'm actually going to be the worst team this year because everybody's hurt. I can't recover in time. So it can be tricky. Let's move over to Anthony Richardson. Matt talked about it in our week 1 episode. Like, hey, are we concerned about Anthony Richardson already getting banged up, a running quarterback? And you and I were both like, we're not really that worried. We'll see what happens. And then of course he gets injured again this week. And he's like, okay, how about now? Or now are you a little bit, not really, but maybe a little bit more than before. It's not anything huge. It's a concussion. But it is concerning that he's not able to protect himself. Are you concerned at all about Anthony Richardson? And, long-term, is this something that we need to see him fix?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're getting hurt every single week, that's definitely something you have to fix. That's definitely on the to-do list. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned long-term. I mean, he's a rookie. You know what I mean? He's a mobile quarterback that's a rookie. He's going to have to learn how to protect himself and play the game at the next level and realize, he's no longer in college. These guys are way bigger, way stronger, way faster. Every single player is the best player you face in college. So he's got to get used to that and realize, even though he was big, taking NFL hits, it's not the way to go. So long term, I mean, he's got to learn the game. There's a lot. We knew Anthony Richardson was coming in a little raw, and he needed the reps to get out there to produce. And I think, playing that position of just the quarterback protecting himself, knowing when to run, but more importantly, knowing when to slide, and just maneuvering his way into the pocket. Those are all aspects of a great QB that they got to learn if they want to be great. And Anthony Richardson's got all the tools. So, the concussion, the week 1, I'm not concerned about it yet because, again, we're only 2 weeks. There's not much I'm concerned about 2 weeks in. There might be things that there's a lot of like red flags in there and situations I'm paying more attention to than others. But for this, just the start of the season, get banged up just a little bit, I'm not concerned yet. Now, all of a sudden, if we're talking like week 6, also gets a second concussion, now we're getting really worried and really concerned about what's going on there. But no, not week 2, not yet. It's, again, not a lot to get fretted over unless you drive the Cam Akers real high to be your running back. Then legit worry.
Then maybe you're a little concerned. You mentioned something on the podcast last night, and I think people were listening because I saw some buzz about it today on Twitter as well, saying the exact same thing that you were talking about last night. If you're in a dynasty league and you are not a legit contender, but you have won today, are you taking Anthony Richardson over Bijan Robinson?
In Superflex?
In Superflex.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably still take Bijan. Because he's like I said, you opened this with a question, like, are you worried? Right? That's a question 2 weeks in. And even though I'm not, and that's hard to say too, because like if Josh Allen or Anthony Richardson turns into Josh Allen, you're talking anywhere at one point in his career number 1, but worst case 5 in a Superflex startup pick overall. Right. Most likely not 1, but he's in that category. Bijan's the hands down number 1 at the most fluid position. Yes. But the difference is, even though running back, it should be the most fluid position on your roster. And it comes with the most risk, but it also comes with such great rewards. When you can get somebody like a Christian McCaffrey that can put up dynamic numbers, we're talking like 28 plus week in, week out at the running back position. Yeah, because a good solid quarterback's going to do the same exact thing. Like the points that Josh Allen's going to get you, you're not losing there, right? Like you're losing the longevity game there. But when you're playing Dynasty, it is kind of hard to just get stuck in that mindset of like 10 years down the road. Like if you have a quarterback like 10 years down the road, because so much going to change. If you play Dynasty, after 3 years, the league looks so drastically different between all the trades and how many rookie drafts you've had. Definitely over these last couple of rookie drafts. So to say like, oh, I don't have to worry about this position for 10 years. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. And that is an accurate statement. But at some point, most likely you're going to find yourself with a pretty high draft pick, whether because of just like you said earlier, Garrett, like injuries hit. You did have a good team, but injuries hit. And out of nowhere, you went from a contender to like, man, it's going to be nice to see what it's like to have that one high first round pick. And then, so you can get that. Bijan himself is an outlier player. He's a running back that's giving you high end quarterback 1 numbers. So I'm going to take that knowing I could probably trade for a pretty high draft pick at any point if I had Bijan on my at my disposal to trade. But at the same time, like I'm putting myself in position. Now, if I'm in full rebuild and I don't have any quarterbacks, I'm 100% taking Anthony Richardson. But outside of that, if I have this pick and I am good at quarterback, I'm definitely taking Bijan because he's one of those outliers. He's the Christian McCaffrey, right? The Jamal Charles, LaShawn McCoy, the Zeke Elliott's, and the Alvin Kamara's. Does he have to prove it? Yes. Am I speaking way too early? I mean, yeah, of course I am. But I mean, his college tape was some of the best college tape I've ever seen. And already I'm seeing him that translate smooth, just so smooth right into the NFL. He's doing exactly what he did in college. So yeah, 100% I'm ready to declare that. I said the same thing about Zeke when he came out. He was my running back 1 overall. So currently I would definitely take Bijan Robinson number 1, unless of course I needed a quarterback really bad. Then it's taking Anthony Richardson. But Anthony Richardson does come with a big reward, but big risk as well.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Bijan too is when you look at the gap between the number 1 overall quarterback in Patrick Mahomes and then the number 2 overall quarterback, number 3 overall quarterback, like the gap's not that big for fantasy football purposes. Like the gap between him and Josh Allen, between Mahomes and Justin Herbert, between Mahomes and Hurts, like the gap's not really that big. You look at dynasty value wise, the gap between Bijan Robinson and whoever you have at 2, I think for a lot of people, it's probably Brees right now, but whether it's Brees, CMC, Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Eckler, whoever you got there, the gap is so huge. In a startup, you're taking Bijan towards the middle to the end of your first round. Whereas with, the quarterback or the next guy, you're not taking them until the 20s. Quarterback, you're taking them 1 and 2, so the gap is just so big between that running back and the next one, that I think that just makes such a big difference. There's a few other injuries on here. I don't want to spend too much time going through all of these injuries. A lot of guys, concussions, and we see guys like David Montgomery, Jamal Williams going to be out. But those were the two I did want to touch on. Montgomery and Williams, with them potentially missing some time, we might get the opportunity to see two rookies that we talked about, at length. We spend a lot of time on the Dynasty Nerds show breaking down rookie tape. That's one of the biggest things we do. It's one of the best things that we do. That's part of the reason we started the Nerd Herd, so that way people could get, both opportunities to hear all of our breakdowns. So two guys we talked about a lot was Gibbs and Kendre Miller. What should people expect out of those two players if we get an opportunity to see them a little bit more featured this week?
It's gonna be real nice to see if Kendre Miller gets featured, just to see what he can do. He looked good in the preseason. We still don't know with I think it's his hamstring, right?
Mm-hmm.
I recall. If he's going to be a full go, then it'd be Tony Jones. But I'm excited to see him. But even excited as I may be, I mean, Alvin Kamara comes back next week. So when Alvin Kamara comes back, he's the star of the show. Right. With Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, we have not seen him yet. Again, only 2 weeks. He has not been really used in between the tackles. And, that's a good statistic to see, but at the same time, it's meaninless because you had David Montgomery who would run between the tackles for you. So it was just unnecessary. You already had a running back that was capable of doing it and doing it well, mind you, in Detroit. So it's going to be way more exciting to see Jahmyr Gibbs, to see how he can be utilized as a 3-down running back, and how how the Lions anticipate that playing out for them. Because with a running back, you plug and play them. There's no hey, let's slowly work them in here. You can get them in here as long as they are up on the playbook, then they should be good to go. And for Jahmyr Gibbs, it's gonna be exciting to see how he handles that. What is this increased target share? Does that increase, or is it just between the tackles? And is it kind of somewhat disappointing because he's averaging 2.7 yards per rush? Right. So I'm way more excited about Gibbs. Kendre Miller, maybe some long term, but I don't think if Kamara's on a roster, we're not going to see his value in the passing game, which he didn't really do a lot in school, but we saw in the preseason he was making some catches. So yeah. No, I don't think we're just going to be able to see if he can do what I think we're all pretty confident he can do, be a first, second down kind of running back, kind of what we were talking about earlier about, Kenneth Walker and Jerome Ford. So definitely excited to see Gibbs.
So a peek behind the curtain a little bit on the Dynasty Nerds podcast, as opposed to the BSN show. I make a show sheet every week for the Dynasty Nerds show, and we almost never get to everything that we're going to talk about. The show sheet always has topics that, hey, in case we have time, let's do this, or, a couple extra pick your poisons or whatever. And we almost never get to anything. So I thought I'd give the people that were listening tonight a little extra treat, and we'll touch on a couple of the things that we didn't touch on in the Dynasty Nerd show. You cool with that?
Oh yeah, dude. That's, I don't even know what's on there, but I'm excited to talk about it. I can't help it. Yeah, we can't get all our stuff. I talk too much.
It's all the stuff that you saw on the sheet yesterday, so it's nothing new. But let's do a couple of the extra pick your poisons that we ran out of time with. Okay. So pick your poison here. Would you rather, in a dynasty league, have Michael Pittman Jr. or Drake London?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because we've seen Drake London do it in very small doses. He's got the draft capital. He's the clear number one there in Atlanta. I mean, Kyle Pitts. Don't even know who that. I don't know if Arthur Smith knows who that guy is. So it seems like he's really focused on there, and then dumping the ball off to Drake London. And he's young. And it's exciting. But Michael Pittman right now, as it stands today, has been the clear number one target in Indianapolis, and they don't have Bijan Robinson. Yes, they have Jonathan Taylor, and he's probably going to play week 5 to come back. But I mean, does anybody expect Jonathan Taylor to be there long term? I don't. So Michael Pittman is being funneled targets right now and producing. That's a tough one. If I had to pick one, God, with how good Anthony Richardson's been, and we know his quarterback, and it's already got that good rapport, I'd probably pick Michael Pittman Jr. But I feel like this is a true 50-50. I know that's kind of like being wishy-washy, but I don't mean to be chalk at all about it. It's just, that's how I feel about them currently. They're in the same tier. They're right next to each other. Michael Pittman's always been a favorite of ours on Dynasty Nerds, that we love his tape coming out. So
No, I'm with you. I took Michael Pittman Jr. in this as well, but we are not in the consensus on that. 63% saying Drake London to only 36%, 36.6% saying Michael Pittman Jr. So most people would rather have Drake. And this was actually a potential trade that I put in a tweet this past week. And it's partly because I'm concerned with how successful Heavy T saying put some respect on that. The producer Tyler, he is a big Falcons fan, so he loved it when I had a bold prediction of like 2,000 plus yards and stuff for Bijan Robinson, but he doesn't like it when I talk trash on some of the other players. But
I know what sucks so Garrett about that. Like I think this is what's the best. I think we talked about before, like for the Falcons, like that's really sweet. They're 2-0, but it's kind of hard now to like put yourself in a position for a quarterback. And I'm sorry. I don't think Desmond Ritter's like, if you want to win a Super Bowl, which is everybody's goal, like, I don't think Desmond Ritter's that quarterback. I think their best case now would be to like hope the Cardinals do really bad and they get another pick and they get Caleb Williams. They could trade for Kyler Murray. Cause that would be dynamic, right? Kyler Murray.
That's what I keep
Bijan
trying to tell
Robinson,
him.
Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Like that's with a great offensive line. That's a fun team to watch.
That would be a very fun team. He said he wants nothing to do with it, but I did have another scenario for the Falcons. I did have another scenario. Next year, things don't pan out, which they're 0-2 right now, so things might not pan out. Little Kirk Cousins to the Falcons. Not as high flying and sexy as Kyler Murray, but man, would he get those weapons involved?
Yeah, that'd be a good fit, man. That'd be really good for Kyle Pitts. For sure.
It would be.
Already look what he's done for TJ Hawkinson there. They have two dynamic receivers now, just getting Jordan Addison, and of course they have Justin Jefferson. So that'd be great for Drake London and still give them room to bring in another solid number two, like a Jordan Addison down the road. That would be a really good offense too. I'd have no problem with Kirk Cousins. I don't think any team should have a problem with Kirk Cousins. He's a very solid quarterback. Like you could win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. Like
you could.
I mean, it's not likely, but I mean,
but you're telling me there's a chance.
Yeah, baby.
All right, let's get to the next one. This one feels a little gross. You know, a lot of the ones we talked about yesterday are guys that are performing well, but here's a couple guys that are not performing super great this year. Would you rather have Miles Sanders or Dameon Pierce?
I think I would probably pick Miles Sanders just because he got that contract. But at the same time, I don't know how much that money is guaranteed. It's probably not much. Hopefully, it would be 2 years.
It's basically 2 years, and then they have an out after 2 years.
All right, so like I'm guaranteed then 2 years of Miles Sanders, who's a pretty solid running back, very viable in the passing game. Dameon Pierce, we saw a little bit so far this year, like he's been able to like catch the football, but still, I mean, he's not doing too great out there in Houston. They're really starting to throw the ball a ton. I'd probably take Miles Sanders here just for the PPR uptick and a little bit more security. Like nothing's guaranteed next to Dameon Pierce next year whatsoever. Miles Sanders is guaranteed next year if he's healthy with the contract.
Yeah, we're on the same side of this one, but against the people once again, 60-40 in favor of Pierce. And I think that has something to do with probably the preseason hype around Dameon Pierce. There was a lot of excitement around Pierce. He had so much work in the preseason. Everybody's talking about he's going to be, you know, the just dominating carries and touches. And man, through 2 weeks, it's been absolutely brutal. And they've actually thrown the ball more than I would have expected them to pretty early, which leads me into another thing we didn't get a chance to talk about on the show last night, but I think should be discussed more in the fantasy realms in general, because overall, I'm not hearing a lot about this guy, but Nico Collins has been really good the past 2 weeks. Somebody that we've been decently high on for a while, and he's been the favorite target of CJ Stroud. 9 targets this past week, 7 receptions on those 9 targets, 146 yards and a tutty. He also had a touchdown in week 1 to go with his 6 receptions for 80 yards on 11 targets. So 20 targets through 2 games. He's done a lot with them. Rich, where's the ceiling for Nico Collins? And I guess where's the floor too? Because we kind of need to know what to do with this guy. But man, he's looking like everything we hoped he could turn out to be through 2 weeks.
Yeah, currently wide receiver 6 on the year. So, I mean, obviously producing at a high level. And he's young. He's got a good rapport so far with CJ Stroud, a player that we liked coming out of Michigan. I mean, this is a player that we thought had some really good upside here. And just like as much as we get excited about running backs, that are named the starter running backs, they're going to get majority of the carries. You're hoping for those 65% carry. And it's the same thing with a wide receiver. If you get a solid wide receiver that's a number one receiver in offense, that's going to throw the football a ton because they're constantly trailing in games, then this is a very solid player. I mean, to me, it's a floor of probably if he stays healthy, a high-end wide receiver too. But is a wide receiver one in the realm? Yeah, I mean, look at Jamar Chase. He's off to a slow start. Will that continue? Who knows? It's all you said earlier. It's on Joe Burrow's shoulder. So right now, I know Tank Dell's kind of done well as well there in Houston, but Nico Collins is producing at a high level as a mid-range wide receiver one. And that, to me, can 100% continue because nothing's going to stop that we've already seen in week 2. That's something I can kind of forecast where this team is going to be trailing a lot. And they're going to be working on CJ Stroud, right? Like he's going to have to grow in NFL. They're trying to groom him into be a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. And they're going to put the ball in his hands and throw the football a lot. And right now he's showing, they brought Robert Woods in there, who's been producing fine too. As like a wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Robert Woods is producing. And what does that show you? And I got 2 weeks in, he had a big game last week, but we just mentioned 3 receivers are pretty much startable in fantasy football right now in Houston. So they're going to keep throwing the football, and it looks right now his favorite target and the most productive target is Nico Collins. Still a really young guy, so I feel very good about having him on my roster right now. And I'm pretty happy because I have a decent amount of shares because I did like his tape enough in coming out that I did draft him a lot. So it's finally nice to see him that finally hit pay dirt. Because, we talk so many times, Gary, about guys like, oh, this guy develops and turns this, like he has this kind of ceiling. So for the most part, majority of the times, those guys don't pan out and become successful guys for whatever reason it may be, whether injury, scheme, system, or just their capability of learning and growing in the NFL. So when you see a guy like Nico Collins develop into what you thought he could, it's a very fun part of this process. And I think if Nico Collins could definitely be the number one receiver here, possibly for the next couple of years for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, that is something that happens a lot where you see the potential of a player and you see what they could be in an offense if everything worked out right. And, if they're not getting the high draft capital, though, they're not landing in a great spot. Like it's really hard to see that all come together. So for it to happen in year 3 for Nico Collins and for him to kind of come full circle, even with a new regime like that's a part of this that's a little surprising too, is, when it's a new coaching staff, a new front office, you don't always get the same opportunities as someone that they drafted, but he's obviously showed that he's the top wide receiver there. Rich, what would you be willing if you were needing a receiver and somebody said Nico Collins is available, what would you be willing to pay to get him on your dynasty roster?
Yeah, I know it's funny, Garrett, is I had an offer today in a league where I have Nick Chubb and J.K. Dobbins. They were my number 2 running backs. I was pretty much a contender until that went down. And I have Nico Collins on that roster. And somebody offered me Dameon Pierce straight up or Nico Collins. And I need a running back. And I'm just really debating, do I just sell all my receivers, like my older receivers, like my Amari Coopers?
Oh, don't do it. Don't do it.
And not take Dameon Pierce and just kind of like try and get some draft capital back and use that and figure out my running back situation next year. And at the same time, like Nico Collins is my 5th receiver on his team. But so going back to that though, I believe in Nico enough where I am not really entertaining that offer because I think the ceiling could stay pretty close to this if all works out. Definitely if CJ Stroud hits, right? And like I said, Nico becomes that number 1 receiver. If I get a guy I spent a 3rd round pick on, maybe a late second, but I think there are a lot of 3rd round picks there for Nico. Then I'm not. If you offer me a second, I'm not taking that. It's pretty close to his real draft capital. If he could give me wide receiver 15, if he could become Robert Woods, his teammate, right? Wide receiver 13 to 16 for 4 to 5 years, that's a home run in Dynasty. That's a championship caliber player that you got. Again, for one of those draft picks that was kind of a high upside player that hit. So obviously you're not offering a first, but maybe if you came at me with 2 seconds, and one of those seconds I thought was going to be pretty high, like you're rebuilding, you're kind of like me, you believe in them, and you already have a whole bunch of firsts, so you're willing to give up 2-1 to 2-3. I might consider it, but I'm probably just holding Nico, to be honest with you.
I think I'm with you. I I'm holding out for a first. Like, you're giving me a young receiver that's showing out and he's the number one option on a team. Like, maybe it's premature, and it probably is premature, but even if he just ends up being okay, I still think you can get those high seconds later. So somebody's got to come strong. If they want Nico, they got to come strong, and they got to offer a first round pick, or it's just not worth it for me.
Yeah. So this is where you'll see comments. You'll put something like that on Twitter, right? And you'll put on a different show altogether. And I'm like, dude, a first round pick for Nico Collins. That's stupid. And yeah, that's a high price, but what is that first round pick and what you hope to be a late first round pick if you're making a move like that, right? Is that pick is a risk in itself. That pick has a 50-50 chance. Like, we look back at the last 11 years of drafts, and anywhere from pick 8 to pick 12, which is the final 4 in your Dynasty Fantasy Football Championship or Fantasy Football Championship, is you have a literally 50-50 chance to have that player to even be playable. Not like a star or good, just to be on your roster still and considered to be a flex to a starter. Because some of those guys aren't even at that caliber. So Nico Collins, we know right now, who's wide receiver 6. Are you telling me there's a less than 50% chance for him to be a very solid contributor to your team that you could start week in and week out for maybe the next 2 to 5 years? If you say no, there's less than 50-50, then that's ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, come with me and give me a late first if you want Nico Collins, because that second, where that 50-50 we talked about, it drops a little bit more and it only gets worse. So I think to all the people that comment saying, oh, that's ridiculous, a first for Nico, I strongly disagree. If you're going to give him up, that's what it's going to take, because otherwise you're just offering me. And of course, if you offer a player for player, right? Like, hey, I'll give you Travis Etienne this for Nico Collins. Like, oh yeah, now we're talking some business. But unless that player that I get in return is also worth essentially a late first, then don't come knocking at my door.
Well, look at this past year, for example. The picks 9 through 12, the last 4 picks. Pick 9, the ADP was Dalton Kincaid. I think we'd rather have Dalton Kincaid. I know you would. You love him.
Yeah.
But then the next 3 guys, Devon Achane, Kendre Miller, Jonathan Mingo. I would rather have Nico Collins over all 3 of those guys.
Yeah. I mean, I'd still like Devon Achane a lot.
I do too. He's a good player, but I would probably take Nico.
Yeah. And Garrett, I think that kind of is the savvy move though. So I feel like after week 2, if you're a true contender and you offer a 24 first, he felt it was going to be late, even when we think it's going to be a good draft class for Nico Collins, I think that owner would snap accept.
Oh, they'd be so, and they might take 2 seconds. They really might. You might not have to go offer a first, but man, I think he's the buy right now. Like it's one of those buy high situations. Like, yes, his value's never been higher, but I still think it's going to go up.
It's my number one saying in Dynasty. It's my truest belief.
Yeah.
It's my favorite part about Dynasty. What looks like an overpay today is an underpay tomorrow. And that's what it is. And I'm right. I'm with you. Like, you offer the 2 seconds first just to see, like, honestly, throw a third in there, make it a little, like, put a little cherry on top, 2 seconds and a third. Cause that's what you'd want to at least get to the back end of the first if you want to move up, and see if that gets it done. And if you do, it's risk, but it's all a risk. It's the funnest part about the game is taking that risk, getting frisky with the Dynasty. So for me, if that didn't get done and you really want a young wide receiver, throw out that late first. Yeah. What's the worst that can happen? It's the same thing with your draft pick. You end up with, like I said, do you want Kendre Miller or do you want Nico Collins right now?
Exactly.
I mean, I'll take
Office Depot's here saying, what's up? Edward Rouse from Monday Night Rants, he's saying he's going to trade a 23 first for Nico right now. So he's going out and making the move. He's ready to, we've inspired people, Rich. That's what we've done tonight. We've inspired
myself. I'm going to try and go out there and see if I offer a couple seconds, see what happens if I have any seconds left, but I'm going to check it out.
Make it happen, Captain. All right, Rich. Well, thank you so much for coming on, joining me tonight, man. I really, really appreciate it. Remind everyone where they can find you, and you're the best at plugging the Nerd Herd. So give the folks a reason why they should join the Nerd Herd.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Dynasty Rich. You can follow, check out the podcast. It's myself, it's Garret Price, Matt O'Hara. Comes out every Wednesday. Dynasty Nerds. We talk Dynasty. Kind of exactly what me and Garrett were doing here. That's exactly what we do on the podcast.
Yep.
And then of course, dynastynerds.com. Check it out. And we have a great tool in your app store right now. It's a Dynasty GM, and you can see the sign behind me if you're watching. It says Nerd Herd. The Nerd Herd is basically just a giant Dynasty community, right? Like you join the Nerd Herd, you join the annually or monthly Dynasty Nerds, and you not only get access to great tools, you get access to film rooms, you get access to nerd scores, you get access to the Discord channel to talk to other like-minded Dynasty fantasy football players. So that's what we do. DynastyNerds.com. Check it out.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for hopping in.
All right. Appreciate you, Garrett. See you soon.
Yep, we'll see you. All right, guys. That's the OG of Dynasty, Rich Dotson. Really appreciate him coming on. If you are not, and I know a lot of you guys, if you're here, you probably listen to the Dynasty Nerds podcast. But if not, come check it out. Drops every single Wednesday. Talking Dynasty, talking all kinds of different stuff. And then we've got the Talking Dynasty. Reminded me, the Talking Dynasty show with myself, Jared Wackerly, who's also been on the show a time or two. So with that, let's take a quick break. Before I take the break, though, I want to remind you guys, this is the time of the show. I know a couple of you guys were asking, where we get into all the trade questions, the start sits, the overall dynasty strategy, however you want to approach it, any questions you got, that's the time to do it. So get your questions in there and we will get to them. We will be right back in a moment.
Like Devon Levi started off in the friend zone and now like he could possibly be wife material. So it is exceptionally hard to trust a rookie goalie in the NHL. The kid is what? He's 21. Like, okay. And he is going to the Buffalo Sabres. But we've all agreed that the Buffalo Sabres are at least a somewhat better hockey team on paper. Again, it's hard to trust a rookie goalie. We've seen future Hall of Fame goalies like, Fleury in his first year struggle, right? Garret Price in his first year struggle. It is tough for goalies to come in and have success. That being said, nobody outside of maybe a Buffalo sports fan can tell me who the two goalies on their roster are, because I didn't know until this morning, until I was reminded that it was Eric Comrie and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. And I was like, okay, well, he has the crease to himself. So all he can do is lose it. That's all he can do. Buffalo is going to be a fun team to watch, which means maybe Devon Levi ends up in what I call the Martin Jones syndrome, which is a goals against average is pretty up there. Save percentage is not very good, but he's going to finish with 35 wins because he's just going to play a lot. And it's going to be that back and forth hockey. The Atlantic Division is not very good, right? There are some teams that are going to regress. So there's opportunities here for Buffalo to do well. And I think his over-under on wins is set at 24.5. So again, there's a lot of things that I may not trust about him, but as a 13th goalie off the board, and I think that is a reach at 13. I think a lot of people have him farther back than that. So he may be 13 on NHL.com's list, but you may end up and show up in your Yahoo or your ESPN draft, and they haven't ranked probably outside of the top 20. So I would have no issue as a second goalie going with Levi, because like, who's taking his spot? Nobody. And volume at one point, if you're in a league that doesn't penalize you for losses, if you're in a league that rewards saves and save bonuses like, for daily, DraftKings does, he has all that working for him. So if it doesn't work out, all right, fine. Then you can go and pick up whoever is there. But it is his net to lose. I understand the risk. I will definitely take, because that's how you win championships, right? You got to take risks to win them. If you're safe, you're going to finish, eliminated in the first round and you had a good time. Or you can try to win the championship on draft day.
Welcome back, Dynasty Nerds, Better Sports Network. Thank you once again to the OG Rich Dotson. You can follow him at Dynasty Rich on Twitter. And I got to remind you guys, it's too good not to. Fantasy Alarm All Pro subscription. That's right. You can get a free subscription. That's right. FREE free. I love free stuff. I know you guys love free stuff. That's why you bum Netflix off your cousin and that kind of stuff. We love free stuff. We do. You go to Costco and you get all the little, the weenies on a stick and all that stuff. We love free stuff. Head over to Fantasy Alarm. You can get their all pro subscription free for 7 days. All of the content, everything on there. Go to fantasyalarm.com. That is fantasyalarm.com. Heavy T says, hey, that Costco bit is a personal attack. It's not a personal attack. It's a testimony. Okay? It's a testimony, Tyler. I go there and I go from place to place to place and I try all the free goodies. I try all of them. Half the time I don't like them because I'm kind of a picky eater. But all of it. There you go. All right. Let's get to some of these trade questions. I know we had some down a little bit, so I got to make sure I get to all of them. Here we go. Start with Tuckleberry Finn. Tuckleberry Finn said, guys, I need to know JT or Kyle Pitts. My team is a contender, but struggling at 0-2. There are 2 killer teams in my 12-team league. I still have my own pick in 24. Lost Dobbins. Should I reload? It feels wrong. It does. It feels wrong to say, hey, here's a young 23-year-old tight end that has all the potential in the world, was a former first-round pick, athletic freak, unicorn has been thrown out when talking about Kyle Pitts. It feels wrong to say that I wouldn't pick him. But I'm taking Jonathan Taylor. If I'm a contender and I think legitimately I can still win. If you think like it's real unlikely, but like maybe, well then I'm not making a move for a running back on a team that's not a sure thing. But if it's a sure, I shouldn't say sure thing. Very confident that you can be one of the top teams going to the playoffs because we never know what will happen. We talked about that earlier. You never know what's going to happen. But if you look at your team right now and you say, I have one of the best teams in the league or one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the league, and I know that I am in that top tier, like I'm competing with all of these guys and I'm way better than everybody else down here, then I'm taking whatever I can get to help me to win a ship this year. And we talked about it on the Nerds Pod last night. I have a lot of faith in Jonathan Taylor moving forward. I really do. I think Jonathan Taylor has the capability of being a number 1 overall running back on the season, despite missing 4 games. I think he's that talented. We've seen him be the number 1 overall running back before. I think he can still be a top 12 guy this year. And what we've seen out of Anthony Richardson so far, assuming health, which fortunately seems like a bigger assumption than we would have originally wanted it to be. But that being said, if Anthony Richardson is the guy that we think he is, that's even less pressure on Jonathan Taylor than it was before. We saw Zach Moss have a good game. Jonathan Taylor is twice the running back that Zach Moss is. So I would take Jonathan Taylor. Now, if I'm more of a rebuild, I'm going to hold on to the tight end that has the longevity, that kind of thing. But in this season, I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor to help me win a ship. Sedata Fork said, are the Jets really going to roll with Zach Wilson for the rest of the year? I don't know. Which, I know that you wanted me to give an actual answer to this, but my real answer is I don't know. I do not know if they will or not. Should they? If they think that they have a shot at a Super Bowl, no. Zach Wilson is not good enough to get it done. He's just not. He's not a good enough thrower of the football. And you've got to get those playmakers involved, specifically Garrett Wilson. If you want to be scoring points, you've got to get the ball in his hands. You've got to get the ball to Brees. You've got to get the ball to look, you can laugh, but Allen Lazard is a solid player that could help this team win. You've got to figure out a way to get somebody to get them the ball. I think the most obvious guy is Carson Wentz, and you can roll your eyes all you want. Carson Wentz is a capable quarterback. He's led teams to the playoffs before. He's a capable quarterback. Or trade for a Gardner Minshew. Trade for a, whoever. Fill in the blank. Jacoby Brissett. But you've got to get them the ball some way. So my guess is they give Zach Wilson one more week. But I'm guessing, and I could be wrong. I don't have any insider information. This is pure assumption. But I'm guessing that the Jets have reached out to a couple of guys and said, hey, we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet, but here's the playbook. Just familiarize yourself with it. We want to give Zach Wilson another week, but we think we're going to, we don't want to look like we're abandoning him right away, but we think that we're going to be looking at other quarterbacks. It would not shock me in the least if they've done that to guys like Carson Wentz. Or, they can't do it to anybody that's already on a team, but some of these free agent guys would not shock me in the least. So I think they're going to give Zach Wilson one more week. But then after that, I think they're bringing in somebody else. And that will be so much better for all of the options. So much better than the option that they have right now in Zach Wilson. All right, let me move back up here. All right. Marcus knows where it's at. He's coming in hot here. And this is a tough one. 25 firsts for Tyjae Spears. It's risky. It's absolutely risky. And it is an overpay at the moment. So let me clarify with that. Like, you are overpaying based on the current market by paying a 25 first to get Spears. But if you're a contender, I would do it. I would. I gave this guy the same exact grade as Jahmyr Gibbs. He was tied for the RB2 in the class for me. So if you think Gibbs could, within the next 2 or 3 years, be more than worth a late 25 first, then I think within the next couple of years, Spears is going to be in a similar spot. They're already giving him a huge workload compared to what other guys get when they have somebody the caliber of Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is an all-world running back, but they're already looking towards the future. In week 1, Spears outsnapped Henry. He didn't outsnap him this week, but he was used a lot in big situations. He had a big overtime run. He was used in the passing game some. I would still like to see more utilization in the passing game, but using the passing game some. And he had 8 carries for 49 yards. Even after the game, Vrabel was talking about how good Spears looks and how if they can figure out how to block for him, he's going to be breaking off 30, 40, 50-yard runs. PFF has rated him the number 1 running back so far on the season and number 3 in pass protection. He's doing everything that you would want a young rookie to do. So is it overpaying based on what the current market is charging? Yes. Would I still be willing to do it? Yes, I would. A 25 first, it's not even this year's class. It's the following years. 25 first is worth it for Tyjae Spears. All right. Hi, Dan says, thoughts on making a move on Kamara or Taylor? So I already touched on Taylor a little bit. And I think Kamara's in a similar boat. Now, you're not going to get the same longevity out of Alvin Kamara that you are out of Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, 2 or 3 years younger there. So you got a little bit more time with him than you probably do with Alvin Kamara. But Alvin Kamara, based on how this season's going and how many running backs are dropping, if you have the inside track to be able to get somebody like that before he comes back, because once he comes back, it's going to be really tough to get him. So I am absolutely willing to go get both of those guys. I think both of those guys have the opportunity to have a really good season. So I would be more than willing to go. Now, it depends on the price. But yes, I'm in overall for a contender to make a move on Alvin Kamara or Jonathan Taylor. All right, Sedated Fork said, I just pulled off a trade today, 14-team Superflex. I sold Kyron Williams for Jamison Williams. Thought it was a good trade for both, but a little concerned that Kyron could be legit. Talk me off the ledge. So the concept of the trade, I have no issue with. The concept of selling high, especially if you're not a contender. If you're a contender, I want to hold on to Kyron because he's getting an absurd workload. But if you're not a contender I love the concept of trading a former backup running back that has been boosted because of opportunity and trading him for a young receiver that I like. The only potential issue is I'm a little worried about Jameson Williams. I'm not convinced on him. I'm worried about how slow things have started for him. Last year he didn't play great. Wasn't bad, but he didn't look great, but he was recovering from the ACL and all this stuff. So I would have probably picked a different receiver, but I'm with you on the concept. So if you believe in Jameson Williams, then I would be willing to do that. All right. Office Depot says start 1, Josh Reynolds, Mims, Thielen, Dobbs, Kendre Miller, or Sky. Leaning towards Reynolds, which is wild. So let me pull up my weekly ranks here. And because I think I know who I would select, but I want to make sure that I'm seeing it all right. So we've got Thielen, Dobbs, Mims, Reynolds. I can say for sure Kendre and Sky right now, although Sky did have a nice little bounce back game this week. I'm probably not doing him. And Miller, I don't know if he's fully healthy, so that concerns me. I'd hate to get a goose egg because of injury. Could he blow up? Sure, but I'd hate to get that goose egg. So man, it's a tough call. This week, the Lions they've got Atlanta this week. Dubs has New Orleans, which is a better defense. Yeah, I think that's going to be a little bit of a shootout, Atlanta and Detroit. So I think I would take Reynolds as well. Edward Rouse says, literally just traded my 24th first. He said, I'm 2-0 and the most points for Nico. Accepted. Look at that. We're already changing lives here. People are already making moves off this stuff. Yeah, if you think your pick is going to be a bottom 3 pick, I would rather have Nico Collins than a bottom 3 pick in the first round. I would, for what it's worth. All right. Let's see. I don't see a name above it, but it says, did I lose this trade? Easily the number 1 contender in a 1 quarterback half PPR league with CMC, Pollard, and Gibbs as the main running backs. After 1 week, traded Tank Bigsby and Kyron Williams for a 25 first, likely mid. I don't think you lost that trade. I don't. Now, could you have maybe gotten a little bit more, especially what we know now? Probably. But those guys weren't starting for you. And the general concept of taking lower valued players and when they break out, trading them for higher draft capital than you used to take them, because Kendre Miller was like the 12th pick, or sorry, not Kendre Miller, Tank Bigsby. He was here. I can tell you exactly where he was at. In May's ADP, he was the 22nd player off the board. So a late second. And Kyron was, last year, a 3rd round pick, late 2nd round pick. So yeah, I would do, I think that's a good trade. You might have been able to get more, but I like the concept of trading for draft capital for guys that are potentially at peak value. All right. Hi Dan says, thoughts on Lamb moving forward. The guy who has him is interested in Kyron Williams and debating on making a move. What would it take? If you can get CeeDee Lamb for Kyron plus, I'm absolutely willing to do that. Let's say it's Kyron and your 1st round pick. Yes, I would do that. Because that's basically you're trading a late first and your own first, which I'm assuming is also late. So 2 late firsts to get a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. Yes, I would do that. I think that's a great trade. Let's see. What else do we got here? Just Josh said he just got Tajay for a 4th and a 2nd. I love it. Hydan says, what do you think it would take to get Kamara? You would probably have to pay a late first. I would like to not have to give a first. So I would see if I could give like a 2nd and like the one guy just did, Tank Bigsby. Something like that. A player that's got some upside and a 2nd for Kamara. I think that's what I would prefer to do in that type of situation. Let's see. What else do we got here? Preseason, this would have been a crazy question. Yeah. 2024 2nd for Miller. I'm fine with that. I mean, you paid a early 2nd, maybe even a late 1st to get Miller this year. So if you only have to give up a 2nd next year to get Miller, I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Miller fan personally, but he's got an opportunity, and we don't know how much time Kamara has left. So I think it's worth it. All right, Red Sox fan says, traded away Roshan and Mingo and received Cup. The league is wide open and hoping Cup puts me over the top. I think that's a move that makes sense all the way around. If you are a contender, then I would want Cup. But if you're in rebuild, I want the young talent. So I think it's one that makes sense all the way around. If it's a wide open league and you think you have a shot to win it all, when Cup comes back, I mean, we see that Sean McVay's, I mean, he's in his bag right now. He's looking good. And Puka Nacua, as good as he looks, we know that Cup is going to be the number 1 wide receiver when he comes back. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I would absolutely do that. Mark said, boom, just hit accept on the deal. Tajay Spears for a 25 first. Absolutely love it. Yeah, he's a stud. He's a stud. All right, let's take another break. If you want to get some more questions in, feel free to get those questions in. I'll try to answer a couple more before we get my main man, Dennis Bennett, on. But I do want to remind you guys again, Fantasy Alarm All-Pro subscription. You've got to go out there. You've got to get it. You can get it for free for 7 days. You can find out if you like it or not. Right? It's like dating, you know? You go out on a couple dates, figure out if you like the girl. If you do, great. You know, pull the trigger. Long-term commitment to Fantasy Pros or Fantasy Alarm. If not, canter like a bad habit. Done and done. We'll take a break. We'll be back in a bit.
Oh boy, we got a big one. We got a big card here. We got
let's go.
We got a super rookie.
Ooh.
Do you guys want to guess who the big card super rookie is? Because
I'm going to guess
exciting.
somebody from the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't recall who were rookies in those particular years. So I'm going to guess Michael Irvin.
Adam?
Jared kind of convinced me to go Troy Aikman there.
I'm going to read the description. In this player's NFL debut, September 10th, 1989, he produced an electrifying 68-yard punt return for a touchdown.
Sanders.
He became the first athlete in the 20th century to hit a home run, September 5th, 1989, for the Yankees at Seattle, and score a touchdown in the same week.
That needs a sleeve. That one needs a sleeve.
Top
100%.
super rookie, neon, prime time, Deion Sanders.
I wasn't that far off. He played for the Cowboys.
I was going to say Deion, and then when you said the early 90s Cowboys, I'm like, oh, Aikman would be a good guess. So I go with your gut is the lesson there.
And there it is, the white and red Falcon jerseys that you said Deion came in with before they changed to black.
That was because the starting lineup for Deion his rookie year has got the red helmet with the white jersey.
Now look at that do. I mean, are you kidding me with that hair?
I mean, you got to have a headband with those curls. You got to.
That is sick. And this is a favorite card. Do we have any value on this card? We have to, right?
Let me see.
Give me a value here.
Let's see here on eBay. PSA 10 Gem Mint Deion Sanders, $149.99. And then a 9.5 is $6. So that guy might be a little bit yeah. Then there's a much more reasonably listed one at $31 for a PSA 10. So it's got some value to it. Yeah, you might want to protect that one.
It's in excellent condition. I guess we have to worry about, is it centered?
Yes, that would be the next thing.
All right. Well, we'll go through the process there. Maybe I'll just frame that one as a great moment in this show's history.
Oh, we are back. Dynasty nerds. We're making trades. That's right, Ed. Does anybody actually call you Ed? I went to say Edward and then just said Ed. And it felt wrong coming off my tongue. Yeah, let me know. Do you go by Edward only? Or do you go by Ed? Or maybe Eddie? Or Edith? I think it's Edith for sure. All right. Michael Anthony says, speaking of Tyler said, please stop while you're ahead. The problem was I'm not sure that I was ahead. I think that's the issue here. Michael Anthony says, speaking of Puka, I think he is going to be a great second wide receiver. Kind of liked him coming out as a sleeper. You know what? This is one of those where I wish I could say that I liked him coming out as a sleeper. This was, I'll own it. I didn't see it. I did not see this coming at all. I did not expect him to be a great separator. I thought what he did best was like yards after the catch, but I thought he was going to have a hard time getting open at the NFL level, and he has had no issues at all getting open. So, we can't bat 1,000, but there were other people that were in on Puka pre-draft and even post-draft. And I think the hype started building, later on in the preseason once we saw how involved he was and whatnot with Cooper Kupp out. But I wish I could say I was one of those guys that was in, because clearly he looks like the guy. He does. He really looks like the guy. And we did a redraft actually yesterday on the Dynasty Nerds podcast, and he was the second wide receiver off the board. So JSN went at pick 6 in the first round. And then Puka, who in a lot of rookie drafts was going 3rd, 4th, sometimes even 5th round, he went as early as the 7th overall pick when we redrafted. Matt took him as the 7th overall pick. Michael said, thanks to the Dynasty Nerds film room, I got to see some Puka. Yeah, that's where you get. Look, I know it seems like I'm just selling our own product, and I'm just pushing ads and whatnot. Look, there's a reason I talk about the Nerd Herd subscription. It's not because I'm just trying to sell it and make money. Like, you want to go watch all 22 tape? Good luck finding it cut up and to the quality that it is in the Dynasty Nerds film. Like, you're just not, especially the volume. We have so many players, and you're not having to sit down and watch the entire BYU game or the entire, whoever it is, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, you're in and out, full game of every snap that player is in. If you are even remotely interested in Dynasty fantasy football, it is one of the most underrated things to be able to get your own eyes on the player and learn how to evaluate these players. So Dynasty Nerds film room, it's invaluable. It absolutely is. Edward says, Eddie in high school, Edward now, Ed when I'm old, normal Edward name series of events, just not Ned, which is actually short for Edward, although I'm left-handed, not Ned Flanders. So no Edith. That's disappointing. I think I might just only call you Edith now because it feels right. Sedated Fork said, are you getting excited for the 24 quarterback class? And the answer to that is absolutely. Caleb Williams looks incredible. And I know Drake May's first couple games have just been fine. But man, you know who he reminds me a lot of? He reminds me a lot of a Justin Herbert type. A guy that, man, did he win a lot of huge games in college? No. But man, he's just built in a lab. He's got the size, he's got the arm, he's got all the things you're looking for in a player, and he's a better athlete than you would think for somebody of his size. So Drake May, I think he's the real deal. I do. I think he's a really good player. We've got then a lot of really interesting names after that. Shedeur Sanders looking great for Colorado. We've got Michael Penix. I mean, there's a lot of different players in this class that could even DJ Ungalele, Spencer Rattler. Like, I know that they have fallen out of grace a little bit, but they've had decent seasons as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the quarterback class shakes out after all of this. M Dub said, what kind of value are you looking to get for Jerome Ford at the moment after Monday Night Football? If I'm not a contender and I don't need him, because if you're in rebuild, you don't need a running back, especially long-term, a guy that's going to be more of a backup. If you can get a second round pick, especially if it's like mid to high, I'm jumping on it because I do think he's going to have a decent season, but his value is going to drop more than likely after this week because one, we've got the Kareem Hunt news, but bigger than that, and I still think he's the lead back ahead of Kareem Hunt, but I do think Hunt will be involved. I don't think it's not a thing. It's a thing. He will be involved, but they play the Niners this week, and I think the Niners defense is going to have a heyday with that offense. I think it's going to be a crazy low-scoring game overall. Sorry, I lied. It's Tennessee this week. Tennessee. They've got the Niners coming up. Tennessee, but still another really good run defense, but not a very good passing defense. So I think the Browns are going to open it up, try to pass it a little more. They're going to have a hard time running the ball on Tennessee. So he might not be somebody that is gaining a bunch of value right away. So absolutely. Make sure you tune in to Monday Night Rants with Edith Rouse. Has a nice ring to it. It really does. Edith is it's the thing, man. It's I'm liking it. I'm liking it. Edith. It is a thing. All right, let's take our final break of the evening. When we get back, lots of things to break down, lots of things to discuss with our own culture coach, Dennis Bennett. He will be joining us right after the break. We will be back.
What can we expect from you out there on the track tonight?
Listen, I have a wife, 2 kids. I have, full-time jobs. I'm never nervous. I don't even know what that word means. Can you explain what nervous means? No. I'm ready to have fun. I've never done anything like this before. I got asked to be a part of this. This is fascinating. Like, it's so cool to just look around and see what goes on here. So I'm just excited to get out on the horse. And you want trash talk? Is that what you're asking me for? No trash talk. I hope everyone does well.
All right. Everyone's going to do well, but it has to be a winner. So give me your trifecta. Who's going to come in first, second, and third? Heat.
I will go Maria 1, me 2, Willie 3, Moose goes 4th.
Well, it's very simple. I won this event last year. I won my heat, and so the defending champ has to be the favorite. Now, that makes me a little nervous just because I feel like it's hard to repeat. There's a little pressure when you're the favorite, but that being said, I'm still optimistic.
So your heat, it's you,
yes.
Moose and Keith from Better Sports Network, and Willie Colon.
I think Keith might be my stiffest competition, and I asked for this because I actually recruited Keith, if you didn't know. So Keith, if you win, you're welcome.
Malusis is very good. I mean, he knows what he's doing, but I'm going to go with Maria.
Keith is waving to the crowd. He must pay attention because they're off. It's Mark Malusis going for the lead. Maria Marino on the outside, and now Keith Irizarry on the outside with speed, and they're 3 wide into the first turn. Woo! Mark Malusis is locked in for his life. 138 and 2. They're into the stretch. Sportscasters Derby 2. And still in front, Keith Irizarry. And now Mark Malusis is trying to squeeze on through.
Come on! Come on! Let's go!
Irizarry. Keith, you did it all the way, wire to wire, over Mark Malusis.
Awesome! That was so cool. The champ is here. Keith, what was it like being out there? Adrenaline rush. You were doing the Instagram live, so there was no panic. You looked cool, calm, collected the whole time, and you won it.
I felt really comfortable. I did. Like, I know you were joking with me before. Are you nervous? Are you whatever? What are you? David, the driver, was awesome. He's like, we're gonna win this. I said, all right, let's win this. And he said, let's go. Yeah, I just felt really comfortable. I did. It was fun. We're in the lead. I got Maria Marino on the right side of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna beat us, right? And then out of nowhere, you see Moose coming up this way, and we feel him breathing down our neck. And I'm like,
Moose
no,
on the loose. Watch out.
Moose was definitely on the loose, and we just got Moose by a neck, a nose, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but again, all of this for a great cause, and it was absolutely awesome to do this. It was cool.
All right, Keith, congratulations, and no matter what, you could always hold this over Moose's head.
Yeah!
Oh, man, we're back. Look at this stud right here. Mr. Dennis Bennett at Culture Coach on the Twitter machine. Dennis, how's it going, my man?
Yeah, I'm having an outstanding night, and I can so relate to Edward because I started out in the Denny phase of my name, and I'm currently in the Dennis phase of my name, but I am rapidly approaching the Den phase of my name. So a couple more years, it'll just be Den. That's what they call old men named Dennis. Hey, Den. So I can see it on the horizon. It ain't far away.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, Dennis or Den, whichever you prefer, we could start.
Still Dennis. Still Dennis.
Still Dennis for now. Okay. Just making sure. We've got quite a few things to get to tonight, but wanted your thoughts too, because I know you have split allegiance between the Lions and the Browns, but your thoughts on all of that last night or 2 nights ago, the Nick Chubb injury, the play of Deshaun Watson, all of that. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I like to think of it more as a dual allegiance, much like being a dual citizen. Like,
okay.
If one parent was born in, another country and the other one in the U.S. So
sure.
That's my Lions Browns fandom, AFC, NFC. It was tragic. There's, from all reports, there's not many better men in the NFL than Nick Chubb. You never heard any drama from him. It was always hard hat, go to work, be a good guy, involved in the community, involved in his community back home where he's from. Just an outstanding individual. Had a tragic injury in college, and he worked his way back from it. And it seems that, it seems he kind of had the same injury this week. At his age, I don't know what the future holds in the NFL. I know that he's going to work as hard as anybody you'll ever see to try to get back. Unfortunately, he's going to be 29 by then, coming off a major injury. I think his contract will be coming up. I could see the Browns giving him hey, we respect you contract. Let's go for it and give it a shot. But you never want to see a guy go out that way.
Yeah, no, it was devastating. Like I tend to be an optimistic person generally in life. Like I like to look at things from the positive angle, what's the best case scenario, that kind of stuff. On Monday night, I really felt like, man, the season's over. Like hang it up now. It's done. It's done. And partly that was because of how much I love Nick Chubb as a player. And it was also partly how bad Deshaun Watson looked overall in that game, and thinking we gave up all these first-round picks, second-round picks, all this guaranteed money to a mediocre, maybe not even mediocre quarterback. Like, you should be able to put the team on your back in those situations, and instead he's turning the ball over.
Yeah, it's at some point, like I still believe he's improving and getting back. It's going to take time. How much time is, we all have different amounts of patience. Now, the first interception, that's kind of on Brian. He should have had that, but the other interception, 2 fumbles, those you just can't turn the ball over 4 times and give up 2 defensive touchdowns. But we're getting to the point he's got to start to make plays again regularly. I'm not sure why he seems so skittish. He was always known for, being cool under pressure. And, it seems that he hasn't regained the ability to get out of pocket and off schedule and make plays, which was what he did when he was, QB 3, 4, 5 back in the day. I'm still holding out hope. In my productive struggle, he was the first draft pick I made. I traded up from 209 to 207, and I was riding that, feeling pretty good. And then, because I felt like he was the last QB in that tier.
Sure.
I went to bed Monday night, maybe last night, as I was getting ready for bed. My other quarterback I drafted there was Jordan Love, who's playing well.
Yeah.
And as I was getting ready to go to bed, a trade popped into my mailbox. Jordan Love, who was it? Jordan Love, a 3rd-round pick, Marquise Brown, and somebody else for Joe Burrow, Deontay Johnson, a 25 first, and Jake Browning. I'm like, I don't need Joe Burrow this year. Yeah, I'll take it. So right now, sitting on Watson and Burrow and looking like.
Wait, hold on. You gave up. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. You gave up more or less Jordan Love, Marquise Brown in a 3rd, and you got back Joe Burrow and a 1st?
There's one more player that is worth mentioning that I gave up. Let me see. Let me find it. I got it right here. Kyron Williams. So he's barely worth mentioning.
I mean, he's helpful for this year, and clearly this was somebody that thinks they could win this year because they're worried about the injury to Joe Burrow, so they want Jordan Love, which still is kind of a riskier player to bet on for a win now.
I agree.
We don't have a huge sample size, so I think you made out like a bandit on that.
I agree. I did not try to negotiate.
No, you just smash accept and say thank you, sir.
Have I fallen asleep and not woke up? I just, and so I was like, well, I don't need Burrow. I think Jordan Love's been playing great. I think I was just looking on Fantasy Pros. I think he's QB 2 or 3 through 2 games. But still, I'm not sure how sustainable that is. I mean, it would be completely unfathomable that he plays at the level of Favre or Rodgers for an extended amount of time. Could he be good? Could he be QB 10 to 15 for several years? Probably. That's more likely than, being QB 2, which, is kind of Burrow's territory. So I was just like, man, I'm down for that. I think
that's one of those
will be fine by next year. I could be looking at starting Caleb Williams and Joe Burrow next year.
That's one of those situations where you look at the trade and then you head to Twitter to make sure you didn't miss some like crazy news like, hey, Joe Burrow's hand just got cut off. Like, something like that where like, what?
Well, and I got a 25 first as well. So I'm sitting right now. I have 424 first and 425 first.
Well, that makes you feel a little better about the Deshaun Watson pick now. It doesn't hurt as bad.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I was like, man, I'm like, I just can't. I gotta take that and not talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You just smash accept, say thank you, sir.
And the other guys, he's 1-1, but he's caught a tough break. His team is built to win. He's going for it, and he's like, I'm all in. He's like pushing the chips in. Hollywood Brown's playing good. Kyron Williams playing good. Jordan Love is playing. They'll help him this year.
Yeah. Well, we're talking a lot about quarterbacks right now. So let's get into one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight. These rookie quarterbacks, second-year quarterbacks, like these young quarterbacks and kind of the state we're in football-wise. So where did you want to start with this one, Dennis?
You know, I guess I wanted to start at last year's QB class. You know, Kenny Pickett's hasn't played great so far this year. He was the lone first-round draft pick, and I really felt like he was going to take a step this year. In 2022, he had the 6th highest time to throw of QBs with over 175 dropbacks. This year, he has the 11th highest time to throw through 2 games. So he's getting a little bit more pressure. His completion percentage has dropped from 63 to 60.5. And coming into the year, it felt like, you know, they added an offensive lineman. They were going to gel. They had really good weapons. And I get it. Deontay Johnson is out. His YPA has dropped a couple tenths of a yard. It seems to be going in the opposite direction for him. Like, if that defense didn't get 2 defensive turnovers Monday night, honestly, I don't know that the Steelers would have won. And
no.
A lot of people want to bang on, Najee Harris. You know, Najee's still fine. He is what he is. He's a volume back. And if you're only going to give him 10 touches, he's not going to produce for you like you want.
Right.
But Pickett, he needs to kind of start to step up and make more plays. They can't just be the crossing to George Pickens where every Browns defender was 8 yards off him. I mean,
right.
I could have caught that one. No, I couldn't have outran everybody to the end zone, but that was open enough. I could have caught it.
Right.
And Pickett just has to make more plays. I like him, but it feels like he's showing that he's really kind of a Derek Carr.
And that might even be a little bit generous because Derek Carr had some pretty nice years early on. So far, Kenny Pickett had a pretty rough year, fantasy-wise and real-life-wise, and he started off the year rough. Now, the only small bit of grace that I'll give him is that he's played 2 really tough defenses in his first 2 games. If we're still seeing this in another week or 2, then I'm getting close to hitting the panic button because we should be seeing a little bit more out of him, a little bit better out of him. Than we've seen so far. The rest of the class last year, it was a really interesting class because he was the lone first-round pick and the lone second-round pick. Yep. Then we had 3 guys go in the 3rd round, which 2 of those 3 guys we've gotten to see a little bit from. And then arguably the best was the 5th-round pick in Sam Howell, who a lot of people, including myself, thought was going to be the number 1 guy in the class pre-draft, and then leading into the draft, you were starting to hear rumblings that, well, maybe not. Maybe it's Willis and maybe it's Pickett and all this kind of stuff. But where are we at with the rest of the class, Dennis?
So Ritter is a conundrum because some of his metrics are shaping up really nicely. High completion percentage. His YPA is up from 6.2 to 7 yards. But he's only throwing for 176 yards per game, and Arthur Smith just isn't giving him opportunities. So I don't know. It doesn't feel like he's going to be a producer yet. We'll see where it goes as time goes on. And it was great for Drake London last week not so great for Kyle Pitts. He's got to be able to support two of them, even with the great running game. Pitts and London should be able to produce. Forget Mac Hollins. You got to, give me Olamide Zaccheaus back. That way they don't feel the urge to have to throw to him. But I think Ritter, he's going to be okay, but he's going to be a very middling guy unless he starts to run a little bit more. They just have to they have to get better with big plays. And I don't know that Arthur Smith is going to give the Falcons that. Malik Willis is a weird one. Like, he looked awful last year. Like, it was like Vrabel put him in, it was like, man, we're going to run the wing T. But then, much like Jordan Love in year 2, they put him in this spring, and he looked much better. And so now I'm going, well, all right, if he gets another year being the backup, he's the 2 there playing behind Tannehill. Unless Tannehill gets hurt, he's not going to get any opportunity this year. And maybe Levis passes him, but, not a lot of people were real high on Will Levis this year. I'm a little, I don't know that Willis is going to make it. Now, he was a 3rd round pick, so it isn't like Jordan Love, who was a 1st round pick. I don't think it's fair to maybe put that kind of expectation on him. But you can see how he grew from last year to this year in preseason. It showed. Whether or not he continues to progress and maybe is the heir to Ryan Tannehill, we'll have to wait and see. He's one of those guys I just throw on the end of my bench in my taxi squad. Just let him sit there and marinate for a couple years. Let's see what happens. See if something happens. Occasionally, if I'm trying to get a deal done and I'm like, I just want one little extra kicker, I'll be like, I'll throw in Malik Willis.
Right.
Just to put him there and see. Corral, Zappy, they're not doing much. Brock Purdy is the one I'm still not quite figuring out, because to me, it feels like if you put any of these quarterbacks there, you'd get the same result.
Sure.
And so there's part of me that feels like Purdy playing 50 games in college was beneficial. So when you were talking earlier about the 2024 class, I had kind of popped up a list and was taking a look, and there's a lot of seniors and redshirt seniors at the top of this list. Michael Penix is a redshirt senior, Bo Nix, Jordan Travis, KJ Jefferson, Spencer Rattler, Joe Milton. I don't think Milton's going to be anything, but a lot of those guys, they're all redshirt seniors. And we see it with Joe Burrow coming out a little older. Are we getting to be okay with that with quarterbacks because of the weight they have to carry for the team? It'll be interesting to watch what this draft looks like with some of these guys that come out. Purdy's up from 153 yards a game to 213 this year. So they're making plays for him. Is completing 67% of his passes. He's doing the things he's supposed to do, which is manage the game, much like Sam Howell, not a great athlete, but runs when he needs to and is productive when he does. But he's got such a set of weapons and in an offense that just produces. I want to buy into him, but I feel like the bubble is going to burst at some point, and we're going to see, all right, this is what he really is. He's really just a guy. And
well, I like Purdy quite a bit. I remember you and I talking about him last year going into the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. And I'm a fan of Purdy overall, but I mentioned on a Dynasty Nerds episode recently, I would be open to moving Purdy. One, because his value has never been higher. But you're right. I think at some point this is going to become cyclical for the 49ers, and they're going to get close, but maybe not quite win it. And then they're going to say, well, he's a good game manager, but does he have enough to carry the team? And it's going to be Jimmy G all over again. And then they're going to draft somebody because they want somebody with a higher ceiling that can do a little bit more. So this feels like it's about to become cyclical here a little bit.
Right. So, we're seeing the system at play.
Right. So I would be open to moving him. while I could for somebody that's a little bit less risky. You know, could you trade him straight up right now for Kirk Cousins? You know, does that feel a little gross because, man, Kirk Cousins is like 35. I only got how many years left? Yeah, I get it. You'd much rather have the 25-year-old than the 35-year-old, but Kirk Cousins is safer. You know, Kirk Cousins, I know in a couple of years is still going to be a starting quarterback somewhere. I don't know for sure that Brock Purdy will. He could be, but I don't know for sure. You know, can I trade him straight up, or maybe not even straight up, but plus, you know, Brock Purdy plus and get Dak Prescott? Those are the kind of moves that I'm kind of looking to make. Can I trade him? And well, maybe not when I hear how high Jordan Love is going, but you know, those are the types of moves I'm potentially looking at.
Yeah, Purdy, he doesn't seem like he's got a high ceiling. He doesn't feel like a guy that's going to ever throw for 35, 40 touchdowns consistently. Is he going to have one of those years? I think so. But like Kirk Cousins, you feel like he's going to put up a ton of touchdowns. He's going to throw for 4,500, maybe 5,000 yards. Even with just 3 or 4 years left in his career, it feels like you're going to get that out of Cousins. So I agree. You're going to take a little, you'll maybe lose a little in the long term because of Purdy's age by going with Cousins, but I love that move if you can pull it off. I don't have a single share of Brock Purdy.
Oh, really? I've got a couple, but it was because I drafted him in like the 5th round last year in some super flex leagues, just as a, you know, I draft a quarterback or two every year as the, you know, we'll see what happens guy. Aiden O'Connell is the one I drafted quite a bit this year at the end of drafts as the, hey, we'll see what happens kind of guy. So we didn't touch as much on Sam Howell. Anything you want to talk about with Sam Howell? Because he's a real interesting one. We talked about him a little bit on the Nerds pod. He's performing really well, but I still worry that this team doesn't make the playoffs. And if they don't make the playoffs, do they blow it up? And so that's where all of this is at with Sam Howell for me.
Yeah, Sam Howell seems to be hanging by a Ron Rivera thread. You know, it seems like if Rivera doesn't stay on there, then they're going to, whoever comes in is going to get their guy. Even to the point where I feel like if Bieniemy takes over, I think he still brings in his own guy, even unless Howell goes nuts this year, which I don't know that he has it in him. You know, he's set 14th in yards per attempt. It's just over 7 yards. He's completing almost 66% of his passes. And he's throwing for about 250 yards a game. Those are decent numbers, not superstar. He hasn't ran like I expected. He's only averaging 12 yards a game on the ground through 2 games. But the way Brian Robinson's been running, I guess he really hasn't had to. And he's got plenty of time to throw. He's had the 10th most time to throw of any quarterback so far. So he hasn't been under a lot of pressure. He just isn't putting up monster passing stats. He's playing good. And I think that for me, what I was hoping was if we could get, 30 to 40 yards rushing out of Sam Howell per game, and a touchdown every 3 games on the ground, that would boost him up for fantasy to a point where if we can get him up to 270 yards a game, if he's throwing 36 passes a game with the weapons he has there, you're like, all right, this guy can be, a high-end QB too. I don't know that that's going to happen for fantasy, but he may very well be good enough because the challenge for the NFL from just not fantasy, but NFL is like, well, if you get rid of this guy, like who are you going to replace him with? Right. And if you got a guy who's showing he can play the position and he's not a detriment, he may not be, you can put the team on his back and he's going to carry you down the field, but he also isn't going to, put up a 30-30 season. Then you can kind of, you see teams get a little more conservative, especially if they're not in a position to draft one of these high caliber early first round quarterbacks. And I don't think that they're going to be in that position. I like Howell. He was my guy coming out in that class. I hope to see him continue to mature and get the ball to Dotson and McLaurin. He's got two excellent weapons.
He really does. He really does. Let's move on from the 22 class to the 21 class. And there's quite a few quarterbacks in the class overall, but there's really only three main guys to talk about. And they were all taken within the top 5. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson. Dennis, let's start with the number 1 overall pick, Bryce Young. He's not been overly exciting so far. There've been a lot of kind of grumblings about him early, but it's not a very good team. He doesn't have a lot of help. What's your opinion on Bryce Young?
So I was a CJ Stroud guy, and I wrestled all off season with whether or not that was homerism or whether I was being able to be objective. And the jury's still out on that, but I was a CJ Stroud guy, and I appreciate that Stroud is making me feel like it wasn't homerism. So Young he's struggling with his completion percentage, only 59.2%. I mean, we hear this week now they're working on goal line packages for Andy Dalton, so Young doesn't get beat up. Young, he's only 4.21 yards per attempt. He's dinking and dunking it. He's not doing great. 6.6 ADOT. The plus side I see with Bryce Young is of the 3 rookies, he has the lowest first read percent. Now, I'm taking that to mean he's getting through his progressions better. So his first read percent is 46.5 versus CJ Stroud at 64.8 and Anthony Richardson at 68.1%. So, Richardson is getting it almost 70% of the time. He's reading that first guy and getting the ball out to him, which has been crazy because he really connected with Josh Downs. And so, I think they kind of read deep. Probably not. I'm not sure how they read. Feels like, and sometimes I feel like it's short, middle, deep. Other times it's like deep, intermediate, short. Maybe.
Well, typically they have on their plays, they have kind of their own order of the reads. So this is the first read, and then typically it even goes a little more, right to left or left to right, depending on where the first read was. But it varies on each play.
So Bryce is doing good. I think he's reading what's being given to him before he makes the decision what to do. It just seems like when he makes a decision, he's dumping it off short. Mm-hmm. So, is that a function of Adam Thielen and Hayden Hurst being there, and him feeling like they're always open? I don't know. But I want Young to be successful, but I don't know what that means. Right now, it feels like mid to high-ish QB2, getting to a point where, he can get the ball down the field. Because Carolina was supposed to have a pretty good offensive line. Well, they're not doing much for Miles Sanders, and with a 4.21 yards per attempt, it doesn't seem like they're doing much for the passing game. Stroud, on the other hand, he's completing almost 64% of his passes and almost 7 yards per attempt. So he's got the highest yards per attempt. So he's getting down the field. He's got an ADOT of 8.1. So he's taking chances. Some of it is that he's just holding on to the ball. His offensive line is a wreck, and he's just fighting for his life, trying to make a play. He's leading the league in sacks. It's like I looked at, he's been sacked 11 times through 2 games, and I just see David Carr all over again. And it makes me so nervous that he's just going to get the snot beat out of him for 3 years and then fade away. You don't want to see that. Richardson, he's kind of in the middle. It's 63.8%. He's slightly a tick up from CJ in percentage, but his ADOT or his YPA is 5.94 and his ADOT is 5. So he's checking down. He's with Richardson, he has that ability to run, and that's where he's making fantasy points happen is with the running game. Week 1, Richardson had a real nice connection with Josh Downs, surprisingly. And both weeks, he's had a good connection with Michael Pittman. I thought that Alec Pierce would get a little more love, but they just haven't connected yet. And we'll have to wait and see. Richardson didn't practice today, being in the concussion protocol. And so if he can't get back this week, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Minshew.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on from the quarterback discussion and let's talk about, a little more patience or panic. We did that last week, and we've got some other players this week that I think we need to talk about. And one of them you've already mentioned, and it's a guy that you and I both like, but the overall community is starting to sour on this player because he is a quote volume back, and there's another back there that's performing well. I mean, you can't deny that he looks quick and explosive out there. So patience or panic on Najee Harris?
So somebody in a chat the other day, and I wish I could remember who it was, just this week, they said they get kind of a Trent Richardson vibe from Najee. Like he's a little lazy, maybe. I don't get that. Does he work like Nick Chubb? I don't get that either, but I certainly don't get the Trent Richardson vibe. He's rushing for 4.6 yards per attempt. And I didn't look up, I don't have it handy, what his yards before contact are. But, Ian Harditz today, I was listening to Kendall Valenzuela and Pete Overzet, and they mentioned that Ian Harditz had tweeted out that Najee Harris has a negative yards before contact number through 2 games. So he's getting hit. Now, he's averaging over 4 yards a carry. He's making money after he gets hit. He's doing what he's supposed to, but he is a volume back. That's what he was his rookie year. It's what he was last year. It's what he still is this year. He's 6'1", 230 pounds. And what you want to do with Najee is you want to lean on him, let him pound that defense, give him, because he's not going to, he'll be okay, touches 0 through 10, but he's going to make his money on touches, 10 through 20 when that defense is like, man, I can't take no more of this. I'm just going to, hope he trips over me. And I don't know that Matt Canada and the Steelers have the patience for that right now, especially with Jaylen Warren popping off. Now, there's some concern that Warren can't handle the volume. He's getting enough, and I don't know that the Steelers are going to rush the ball 35 times, which would allow Warren to get a good amount of touches and Najee to get his 20. It just doesn't feel like that's going to happen, especially with Pickens and Deontay Johnson and, now Calvin Austin looking good. So he's going to have to maybe make something happen to warrant them not giving the ball to Jaylen Warren.
Yeah, Jaylen Warren, he's looked good, but I'm with you. I don't think that Najee Harris is a bad back. I think he's the same guy that he always was. He was just propped up a lot by all of that receiving volume that he got on checkdowns from Big Ben in his rookie season. So I think people are missing that all of those points that you're getting from that. I think if he got the volume, he would still be doing similar. But that being said, I don't know that he is going to continue getting the volume. And so you kind of have to adjust. Yep. All right. Let's talk about another guy, patience or panic. Let's head over to the quarterback position. And he's an interesting one because he had a rough week 1, but his week 2 was better. Actually, his week 2 overall was really good. in the second half. Patience or panic on Daniel Jones. Week 1, he looked terrible against Cowboys. The first half of week 2, he looked terrible against the Arizona Cardinals. And then they flipped a switch in the second half and looked great. But it's the Cardinals. So where are we at with Daniel Jones?
I think he's going to be fine. A lot of it's going to depend on, will a wide receiver ever step up, though? You know, they've got Darren Waller, and he's, you know, seems to be questionable week to week with getting dinged up. And the offensive line is a little bit iffy. But Dayball's running him. Dayball's giving him the Josh Allen treatment. And I think as long as they keep doing that, Jones is going to be good for fantasy. And it's going to be rough this week without Saquon Barkley. That'll be a real test to see, can Jones figure out how to execute the game plan to put points on the board without Saquon? Because nobody, not even Darren Waller, is an athlete of Saquon Barkley's caliber.
No, absolutely not.
And you know, I don't think Matt Breida is it, but I don't know that they trust Eric Gray, and Gary Brightwell is, you know, dollar store David Montgomery. Their running game is going to be Daniel Jones this week, creating enough question marks for the defense that hopefully one of those backs can make some plays. I didn't, you know, in my redraft leagues, I didn't go out and get Matt Breida. I didn't go out and get Gary Brightwell. I'm not buying into that. I think Jones has a ceiling because he has his turnover history. And I know the last year that kind of got put to bed. This year, it seems that it pops up a little bit here and there. You know, the decision making is a little bit questionable. And that comes down to the offensive line not playing very well. I'm not panicking on Jones. Not panicking on Najee for that matter either.
All right. So 2 not panics. How about this guy? We've talked about Brock Purdy. How about his favorite tight end, George Kittle? Tight end position this year has been questionable at best. George Kittle in his 2 games, PPR, this is full PPR, 4.9 and 6 in the 2 games so far. Where are we at with George Kittle?
I am in full-on panic room mode.
Okay.
I said I was beating the drum all off season that offense could support Christian McCaffrey and then 1.5 of their 3 other skill position players. And in any given week, you just don't know which one it is. And right. I think it's safe to say that of the 3, Kittle is the lowest priority. Is he going to have some games this year? He is, because he's good. But he's not in a TJ Hawkinson role or a Darren Waller role or a Mark Andrews role. That's not, he's more of a Dawson Knox role. And
sure.
It's not great for fantasy. For me, if I'm looking to get out of the George Kittle business. I think that they like what they're getting out of Ayuk and out of Debo, and Kittle. Like I said, he's good. He makes plays. I just think the opportunity isn't going to be as great for him. And so, yeah, I am in panic mode on George Kittle.
Well, George Kittle, 29 years old, so not a spring chicken anymore, although we do know that these tight ends can last a little bit longer than some of their counterparts in fantasy football. But you add into that, well, here's actually what I wanted to bring up. If you're looking to trade George Kittle, after this week might be your best bet, because right now, Brandon Ayuk is questionable for the Thursday night game. So it's a primetime game. Anytime someone does well on primetime, it's the perfect opportunity to sell high. And with Brandon Ayuk potentially not playing, if he's out, that's going to leave a lot more targets for George Kittle. So I think this would be your perfect opportunity to potentially sell high after week 3 especially if Brandon Ayuk does not play.
Now watch Juwan Jennings catch 3 touchdown passes.
Right. And you have no sell window now at all. None to speak of. All right. Shoot, I just lost my list. Clicking on too many different tabs. There it is. Sorry about that. All right. Next one for the patience or panic. And where did he go? I'm having all sorts of trouble over here, Dennis. Oh, all right. I know what the answer probably is. But let's frame it slightly different. Instead of patience or panic in the sense of like, am I out on this guy or am I in on this guy? For long-term, still looking like or even just for the season, looking like a top 5 wide receiver. Jamar Chase. He's had 2 rough weeks with 9.1 and 8.1 points. So he's only averaging 8.6 points per game, which puts him at wide receiver 54 at the moment. And Joe Burrow's banged up. Are we panicking at all, or is that too premature, Dennis?
I think it's a little bit premature. You know, we're going to see a little bit of squeaky wheel getting the grease this week. You know, he hasn't come right out and said, throw me the damn ball, but he's kind of insinuated that, you know, they need to take some more shots downfield. Mm-hmm. I think that, you know, Browning, I expect Browning to play. I think what's pissing Chase off mostly is that in preseason, he said, hey, man, take the time and get yourself right. We'll see you in week 5. I did it last year, and it was the best thing I did. Mm-hmm. And Burrow's like, no, I'm going to be a hero and come back. And now he may still miss 5 games. Just now it's like in the early to mid part of the season while he gets that calf right. And I think that's what's chapping Chase's butt right now. I'm not panicking yet. If I find somebody that is panicking, I'm definitely going to see what I can do to take that panic situation off their hands.
There you go. Yeah, he's still a stud. Long-term dynasty-wise, should still be that guy. All right, what about Dameon Pierce? Dameon Pierce, a running back for Houston. There was a lot of excitement coming into the season for him. 6.7 and 5.5 points in his first 2 games.
Pierce is in the unenviable situation of playing for a team that in week 2 had 0 of 5 preseason starters available on their O-line. And they've got some good players on the O-line. They just aren't healthy. And so they get behind, and then C.J. Stroud's throwing the ball 45 times a game, and it takes him out of the game plan. I feel like he's one of these guys you want to try to pick up for a stretch run to give yourself some depth. If you can find somebody that's, you know, down on the situation. I don't think he's a superstar by any stretch. He's a classic hashtag 2 to 3 year window back. I'm not out, but I'm looking for an opportunity to have him available to me only as a flex.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty far out. I've never been the biggest Pierce guy. I liked him okay as a prospect, but never loved his situation. And I'm with you, 2 to 3 year window guy at best for sure. So, Dennis, that wraps things up, man. I had a couple more I was going to get to, but we're out of time here. So, remind everyone where you're at and what you're working on.
You can catch me at culture_coach on the X machine. I won't give up my triple X machine name though. We got the Thursday. We got the Thursday night football game script coming out by Steven Pintato. The big one coming out Saturday that touches on all the games. Start sits, all kinds of stuff. Get over to the website.
Awesome. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price. We will be back next week recapping everything from week 3 and looking to week 4. Love you guys. See you guys next week.